Welcome to today's explainer. Look, if you've ever tried to teach an abstract religious or philosophical concept to a young child, you already know the struggle, right? I mean, how do you explain the unseen? How do you teach ultimate accountability without just relying on fear? Well, today we are unpacking a really comprehensive problem solution toolkit drawn directly from our sources on Islamic education. We're going to bridge the gap between abstract theology, child-friendly developmental psychology, and the actual visual design of learning materials.
Okay, let's dive into this. Our roadmap for today covers 5 key areas. First, the foundation of faith. Then, teaching by age group. After that, analogies and interactive activities. Then we'll look at designing educational materials, and finally, overcoming common teaching challenges.
Section 1. The Foundation of Faith.
So, before we can even talk about how to teach, we have to clearly define exactly what is being taught. Our sources establish a really solid foundational knowledge base that essentially splits into 2 distinct categories. First up, the 5 pillars of Islam. Think of these as the essential physical actions that define the practice of the faith. We're talking about the declaration of faith, prayer, charitable giving, fasting, and pilgrimage. Then, supporting all of those actions, we have the 6 articles of faith. Now, these aren't actions. They are the core theological convictions about reality itself. Belief in Allah, the angels, the divine books, the prophets, the last day, and divine decree, which is also known as Qadr.
To firmly anchor these 6 articles, the Lajna Imam Allah text highlights a really foundational hadith narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. It clearly outlines the precise requirements of faith, exactly as taught by the Prophet Muhammad. You can think of this quote as the absolute bedrock for the theological concepts that we, as educators and parents, are tasked with passing down to the next generation.
Section 2. Teaching by age group.
And this brilliantly illustrates that while we know the what, we really have to figure out the how. A child's cognitive abilities completely dictate how these pillars and articles should be introduced. Just look at how the teaching method naturally evolves. For ages 3 to 5, abstract concepts are literally impossible for them to grasp, so the focus is entirely on sensory learning through play, songs, and daily routines. By ages 6 to 9, kids can actually follow narratives, so storytelling and drawing take center stage. Moving into ages 10 to 12, critical thinking starts to develop, which means we have to transition into having real, nuanced conversations. And finally, for teenagers, the whole focus shifts to independence, where honest mentorship completely replaces traditional, lecture-based instruction.
Section 3. Analogies and interactive activities.
But what happens when we need to teach something highly complex? I mean, abstract instruction rarely sticks with kids, so we have to rely on vivid, hands-on analogies to make the unseen concrete. For instance, balancing free will with divine destiny, or Qadr. Now, what's really interesting about this is a brilliant physical demonstration by Imam Ali from our sources. He was once asked about the extent of human control, so he told the questioner to lift one leg. The person did. Then Imam Ali said, "Okay, now lift the other leg while keeping the first one raised." Naturally, there's no way the person could do it.
This perfectly contrasts the 2 concepts for a child's mind. Lifting that first leg, that represents free will, human choice, empowerment, and our responsibility to make good decisions. The complete inability to lift the second leg represents Qadr, divine destiny, the absolute limits of human control, and the humility of trusting a much larger divine plan. It's just a beautifully simple, kinesthetic way to balance empowerment with humility.
Another incredibly complex concept is Judgment Day. The sources clearly warn against using this concept to frighten young children. We definitely don't want to do that. Instead, this time of ultimate accountability should be framed through specific divine attributes, Al-Rahman, the most merciful, and Al-Adil, the most just. By doing this, it shifts the entire focus from fear over to fairness and positive accountability.
To make this even more relatable, the sources highly recommend sharing specific parables from the Hadith. For instance, there's the story of a sinful woman who was forgiven entirely simply because she gave water to a thirsty dog. Conversely, a woman was punished for cruelly locking up a cat. These stories prove to children that even the tiniest acts of kindness or cruelty are noticed. It takes this grand, sweeping concept of Judgment Day and makes it highly relatable to their everyday interactions with the world around them.
Beyond analogies, active play is absolutely essential, especially for toddlers who have, let's face it, endless energy.
The sources provide some fantastic hands-on activities to really lock in these theological concepts. You could build a 5 pillars tower out of simple cardboard tubes. If you pull one tube out, the whole tower falls, beautifully showing how the pillars support the faith. You can create a prophet story theater where you act out narratives with random household costumes. There's a halal versus haram picture sorting game, a memory card game for the 99 names of Allah, or even building a tiny mosque model out of cardboard to understand community functions. This is kinesthetic and visual learning at its absolute best.
Section 4. Designing educational materials. So the crucial point is, once you have your analogy and activity, you need a visual aid. Let's look at how to design it.
Whether it's a poster or a flashcard, when you are creating materials for kids, visual chaos is the enemy of learning. Our sources recommend the 60-30-10 color rule. It goes like this. You use a light, neutral background for 60% of the design, a dominant bright hue for 30%, and reserve just 10% for a little pop of accent color. This specific ratio works wonders because it keeps educational materials feeling playful and energetic, but completely organized and super easy for a child's eyes to navigate.
Now here is a rapid-fire design tip that makes a massive difference. Swap out your pure black text. Seriously, instead of black, use deep navy, dark teal, or slate gray. These softer dark colors maintain the high contrast necessary for early readers to clearly see the letters, but they completely remove the harshness of pure black, keeping the whole aesthetic super friendly and approachable. And for those of you who are incorporating Arabic text into your materials, there are some incredible free resources out there. Creators can access 24 totally free Arabic fonts specifically curated for children's designs. And the best part, these are completely compatible with everyday software you probably already use, like Canva, CapCut, and Photoshop. It proves that professional, kid-friendly typography is 100% accessible to parents, homeschoolers, and everyday educators without needing a massive budget.
Section 5. Overcoming common teaching challenges.
Let's transition to the real world for a second and validate the everyday struggles we all face. It is the question every educator dreads. My child says this is boring. Now what? It's a fantastic question because it's just so common. But our sources reframe this beautifully. Boredom isn't a failure of the child, and it certainly isn't a failure of the religion. It is simply a signal of a mismatched teaching method.
To fix that mismatch, we have some very actionable solutions. First, identify your child's learning style. Are they visual, kinesthetic, or auditory? And adapt to it. Second, ditch those hour-long lectures. Rely on 5-minute daily micro-moments instead, like a quick story at breakfast or a short explainer in the car. Consistency matters way more than intensity. Third, build trust through honesty. If you don't know the answer to a deep theological question, just admit it. Say, I don't know. Let's research it together. And finally, remove the pressure. Focus on positive exposure and honest mentorship rather than rigid perfection.
We're going to wrap up today's explainer with this thought. Ask yourself, are you just planting seeds for a test tomorrow? Or are you designing an environment for a faith that lasts a lifetime? By blending foundational knowledge, developmental awareness, and really smart design, you aren't just transferring facts, you are carefully crafting an environment where curiosity and understanding can thrive over a lifetime. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep learning.